In the rugged frontier town of Cedar Ridge, Montana, where promises were as binding as iron and a person's word meant everything, young Emma Hartwell made a vow that would echo through the years. When tragedy struck the town's most respected rancher, leaving him a widower with a broken heart, an 8-year-old girl's innocent declaration would plant the seeds of an extraordinary love story. This is the tale of how childhood innocence bloomed into unwavering devotion, and how one promise, kept against all odds, transformed 2 lives forever. Chapter 1. The Promise Made in Grief. The autumn of 1887 brought devastating tragedy to the frontier town of Cedar Ridge, Montana. Martha Brennan, beloved by all who knew her, had been thrown from her spooked horse while riding the familiar trail to town. The rocks of Devil's Canyon claimed her life, leaving behind a community in mourning and a husband shattered by unimaginable loss. Thomas Brennan stood as one of the territory's most respected ranchers. At 32, his weathered hands and broad shoulders told the story of countless hours working the harsh Montana land. His gentle gray eyes, once bright with contentment, now reflected the hollow emptiness that follows profound loss. The Brennan Ranch, which had once echoed with Martha's melodious singing and dreams of children's laughter, now sat wrapped in suffocating silence. The town gathered in the community hall following Martha's burial, bringing covered dishes and hushed condolences. Thomas positioned himself in a corner chair, his imposing frame somehow made smaller by grief. He accepted each visitor's sympathy with mechanical nods, his mind lost in memories of happier times. The crushing weight of his solitude pressed down upon him like a physical burden. Across the crowded room, 8-year-old Emma Hartwell observed the broken man with unusual intensity. Her auburn braids framed a face marked by wisdom beyond her tender years, and her serious green eyes held depths that set her apart from other children. While youngsters played quietly in the corner, Emma studied Thomas with the unwavering focus that would define her character throughout life. As the evening wound down and neighbors began departing, Emma made her move. She crossed the room with purposeful steps, approaching Thomas with the fearless determination that adults often admired in children. Standing directly before his chair, she clasped her small hands behind her back and waited patiently for his grief-clouded eyes to acknowledge her presence. Her young voice carried remarkable clarity as she addressed him. She spoke of understanding his sadness about losing Martha, wisdom unusual for someone so young. Emma shared what her mother had taught her about broken hearts and the healing power of time, her words cutting through Thomas's emotional numbness more effectively than any adult consolation he had received. Then Emma did something extraordinary that would resonate through the next decade of their lives. She placed her tiny hand on his knee and made a declaration that stunned everyone within hearing distance. With absolute sincerity, she promised that when she became old enough to be a proper wife, she would marry him so he would never have to face loneliness again. The hall fell into stunned silence. Some adults exchanged amused glances, while others shifted uncomfortably at the child's bold statement. But Thomas Brennan looked into those earnest green eyes and recognized something remarkable, complete and utter sincerity. His voice, rough with suppressed emotion, carried clearly through the quiet room as he acknowledged her extraordinary offer. He thanked her for her kindness and promised to remember her words if she still felt the same way when she reached womanhood. In that moment of shared understanding between a grieving man and a determined child, an unbreakable promise was born from the ashes of tragedy. Chapter 2. Years of Growing Strong. The seasons turned relentlessly in Cedar Ridge, each one marking Emma Hartwell's steady transformation from determined child to remarkable young woman. While other girls her age focused on ribbons and parlor games, Emma approached her development with a singular purpose. She understood that becoming worthy of Thomas Brennan required more than simply growing older. Emma's education became her passionate pursuit. She excelled in her studies at the one-room schoolhouse, mastering arithmetic, literature, and geography with enthusiasm that impressed her teachers. During long winter evenings, She practiced her penmanship by candlelight and read every book the traveling merchant brought to town. Her mother, Sarah Hartwell, initially dismissed her daughter's childhood declaration as innocent fancy, but gradually recognized the unwavering determination that drove Emma's self-improvement. The young woman learned practical skills with equal dedication. She mastered cooking, sewing, and household management, understanding that frontier life demanded competence in all domestic arts. Emma also developed an unusual understanding of ranch operations, often visiting neighboring spreads to observe cattle handling, crop rotation, and land management techniques. Her neighbors found her questions thoughtful and her attention to detail remarkable for someone so young. Meanwhile, Thomas Brennan struggled through years of profound isolation on his sprawling ranch. The silence that had once felt temporary now seemed permanent, broken only by the sounds of wind through empty rooms and his own footsteps on lonely floors. He worked from dawn until exhaustion claimed him each night, using physical labor as a shield against overwhelming loneliness. Despite his solitude, Thomas remained aware of Emma's growth and development. During his infrequent trips to town for supplies, he observed her transformation with quiet amazement. The serious child who had made such an extraordinary promise was becoming an accomplished young woman of remarkable character. Her teachers praised her intelligence, her neighbors admired her kindness, and her peers respected her quiet confidence. The townspeople of Cedar Ridge watched both Emma and Thomas with growing interest as the years passed. Some dismissed the childhood promise as forgotten nonsense, while others recognized the steady purpose in Emma's actions and the subtle hope that occasionally flickered in Thomas's weathered features. The promise hung between them like an invisible thread, neither acknowledged nor forgotten, simply existing as part of their shared future. As Emma approached her 18th birthday, the entire community sensed that something significant was approaching. The determined child who had comforted a grieving widower was becoming a woman of substance, and her childhood vow remained unbroken by time or doubt. The question that lingered in every conversation was whether she would truly honor those words spoken so long ago. Chapter 3. The Return and Recognition. The morning of Emma Hartwell's 18th birthday dawned crisp and clear across the Montana Territory. October's sunlight streamed through the frost-covered windows of the Hartwell home, casting golden patterns across the wooden floors where Emma stood preparing for the most important day of her life. Unlike other young women who might spend such a milestone celebrating with friends or contemplating their futures, Emma had but one purpose in mind. She dressed with deliberate care, choosing her finest blue dress, the color of prairie skies that Thomas had once mentioned Martha loved. Her auburn hair, now long and lustrous, was arranged in an elegant style that spoke of womanhood rather than girlish innocence. In the mirror, Emma saw not the 8-year-old child who had made an extraordinary promise, but a confident young woman ready to honor her word. The walk to the Brennan Ranch stretched longer than usual, each step weighted with a decade of preparation and determination. Emma's heart beat steadily as she approached the weathered wooden fence that marked the property she had dreamed of calling home. The ranch house sat silhouetted against the morning mountains, its windows reflecting the climbing sun like watchful eyes. Thomas emerged from the barn as she approached, his tall frame still impressive despite the silver now threading his dark hair. At 42, he carried the bearing of a man who had weathered both triumph and tragedy. His gray eyes widened with surprise as he recognized his visitor, taking in the transformation of the child he remembered into the poised woman before him. Emma stopped at the gate, her hands steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Her voice carried the same clarity it had possessed 10 years earlier, though now it held the depth and resonance of maturity. She reminded him of the promise made in grief all those years ago, speaking with calm certainty about her decision to honor those words. She explained that her childhood declaration had grown into genuine affection and deep respect over the years of watching him from afar. Thomas stood frozen, his weathered features reflecting astonishment and something deeper, a flicker of hope he had thought permanently extinguished. The lonely widower who had buried his heart with his wife found himself confronting the impossible reality of Emma's unwavering devotion. Her words carried weight and sincerity that no childhood fancy could possess. The conversation that followed would be remembered by both for the rest of their lives. Emma spoke of her preparations, her education, and her absolute certainty that she wanted to share his life. Thomas, struggling with disbelief and growing recognition of her genuine maturity, found himself considering possibilities he had never dared imagine. Word of Emma's bold declaration spread through Cedar Ridge like wildfire. The community that had watched both of them for 10 years now found itself divided between those who admired her faithfulness and those who questioned the wisdom of such an unconventional match. Some called it romantic destiny, while others whispered about foolish infatuation and inappropriate age differences. But Emma Hartwell had crossed her threshold into womanhood with purpose, and nothing would deter her from the promise that had shaped her entire life. Chapter 4. Facing the Opposition. Cedar Ridge split like kindling under an axe following Emma's bold declaration. The small frontier community found itself sharply divided between those who admired her steadfast devotion and those who viewed her commitment as dangerous foolishness. Conversations at McKinnon's General Store and the town saloon buzzed with heated debates about propriety, wisdom, and the nature of true love. The opposition proved fierce and vocal. Several prominent townswomen, led by the stern Mrs. Adelaide Morrison, made their disapproval known through pointed comments and cold shoulders. They argued that Emma was throwing away her youth on an older man's scar by tragedy, insisting she deserved a fresh start with someone closer to her age. The Methodist preacher delivered thinly veiled sermons about the importance of suitable matches and the dangers of misguided devotion. Emma's own family wrestled with conflicting emotions. Her parents, Sarah and William Hartwell, had watched their daughter's unwavering focus for 10 years, initially hoping she would outgrow her childhood fancy. Now faced with her absolute determination, they found themselves torn between respecting her choices and protecting her from potential heartbreak. The most aggressive opposition came from Marcus Delacroix, son of the territory's wealthiest cattle baron. At 24, Marcus possessed everything the town matrons considered desirable in a suitor: youth, wealth, striking looks, and ambitious plans for expansion. He had recently returned from college back east, bringing sophisticated manners and grand visions for modernizing the territory's ranching operations. Marcus pursued Emma with relentless determination, appearing at church socials and town gatherings with expensive gifts and flowery speeches about her beauty and intelligence. He spoke passionately about the life he could offer her: travel, luxury, and social prominence far beyond what a simple rancher like Thomas could provide. His persistence grew increasingly uncomfortable as Emma politely but firmly declined his advances. The pressure mounted from multiple directions. Well-meaning neighbors cautioned Emma about the challenges of marrying a man haunted by memories of his deceased wife. Others questioned whether Thomas could truly love again, or if he would always compare her to Martha. Some whispered cruelly about the appropriateness of their age difference, suggesting that Emma's infatuation would fade once reality set in. Through it all, Emma remained unshaken in her conviction. She met each criticism with quiet dignity, each doubt with patient explanation, and each alternative suitor with gracious but firm refusal. Her composure under pressure revealed the strength of character that had sustained her childhood promise through 10 years of growth and maturation. The battle for Emma's future had begun in earnest, with the entire community watching to see whether love built on a decade of faithful preparation could withstand the storms of social disapproval and determined opposition. Chapter 5. The Test of True Love. The confrontation that would define Emma and Thomas's future arrived on a cold November evening at the town's monthly harvest dance. The community hall buzzed with tension as two opposing camps watched Emma enter beside Thomas, her hand resting confidently on his arm. She wore her mother's pearl earrings and a dress of deep green silk that transformed her from country girl to elegant woman. Marcus Delacroix intercepted them near the refreshment table, his jaw set with determination, and his expensive suit impeccable despite the frontier setting. His voice carried across the crowded room as he made one final, public appeal for Emma's hand. He spoke of the grand future he could provide, the opportunities that awaited beyond Cedar Ridge, and the foolishness of binding herself to a man still haunted by his past. The hall fell silent as Marcus's words grew more desperate and cutting. He questioned Thomas's ability to truly love again, suggesting that Emma would forever live in Martha's shadow. His accusations turned personal, implying that Thomas was taking advantage of a young woman's misguided loyalty rather than protecting her from her own poor judgment. Emma's response silenced every whisper and stilled every movement in the packed hall. She stepped forward with regal composure, her green eyes flashing with controlled fire. Her voice rang clear and unwavering as she addressed not just Marcus, but the entire community that had doubted her choice. She spoke of 10 years spent preparing herself to be worthy of Thomas Brennan, not from childish infatuation, but from genuine admiration for his character. Emma described watching him endure grief with dignity, work his land with dedication, and treat every person in town with respect and kindness. She declared that her love was not born from girlish fantasy, but from years of observing a man of true integrity. Her words cut through the opposition like a blade through silk. She challenged anyone to question her maturity or her right to choose her own destiny. Emma made it clear that she would not be swayed by social pressure, family concerns, or romantic alternatives, no matter how appealing others might find them. Thomas, who had stood silent through Marcus's attacks, now stepped beside Emma with quiet pride. His weathered face showed not embarrassment, but profound respect for the woman who had just defended their bond with such eloquence and courage. The hall erupted in murmurs of admiration and surprise. Even some of Emma's harshest critics found themselves reconsidering their positions in the face of such passionate conviction. Marcus Delacroix, thoroughly defeated, retreated from the hall, his dreams of winning Emma finally shattered against the rock of her unwavering determination. Chapter 6. A Promise Fulfilled. The spring wedding of Emma Hartwell and Thomas Brennan transformed Cedar Ridge from a divided community into a unified celebration of enduring love. The small church overflowed with neighbors who had witnessed their extraordinary journey from childhood promise to mature commitment. Wildflowers adorned every windowsill, their bright colors reflecting the joy that had replaced years of doubt and opposition. Emma walked down the aisle in her grandmother's ivory silk dress, altered to fit her slender frame perfectly. Her auburn hair was crowned with a simple wreath of mountain laurel, and her green eyes shone with absolute certainty. At the altar, Thomas waited in his finest dark suit, his weathered hands steady and his gray eyes filled with wonder at the remarkable woman approaching him. The ceremony itself was simple but profound. When the preacher asked if they took each other as husband and wife, their voices rang clear and strong through the packed church. Emma's childhood promise had matured into a woman's sacred vow, spoken with the same unwavering conviction that had sustained her through 10 years of preparation. The kiss that sealed their union drew applause that shook the rafters, but neither Emma nor Thomas heard the celebration around them. In that moment, they existed only for each other. The lonely widower who had found love again and the determined woman who had kept faith with her heart. The reception overflowed with genuine warmth as former doubters offered heartfelt congratulations. Even Mrs. Adelaide Morrison admitted privately that she had never seen a bride more radiant or a groom more blessed. The community that had questioned their match now marveled at the obvious depth of their connection. As autumn arrived, the Brennan Ranch underwent a remarkable transformation. Emma's presence breathed new life into rooms that had stood silent for over a decade. Curtains appeared in windows, flowers bloomed in carefully tended gardens, and a sound of laughter once again echoed through the halls. The kitchen filled with the aromas of fresh bread and simmering stews, while the parlor hosted neighbors who came calling with increasing frequency. Thomas, who had lived as a ghost among his memories, rediscovered the joy of sharing daily life with someone who genuinely cherished his company. Emma had not only kept her childhood promise, but had exceeded every hope he had dared harbor during those lonely years. On quiet evenings, they would sit together on the porch, watching Montana sunsets paint the sky in brilliant colors. Emma would rest her head against Thomas's shoulder, content in the knowledge that her patient faith had created the life she had envisioned as an 8-year-old girl with an unshakable belief in the power of promises kept. This incredible true story proves that some promises transcend time itself, turning childhood dreams into life-changing reality. If you loved discovering how Emma's unwavering faith transformed 2 lives forever, smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales of love, determination, and promises that change history. Your support helps us bring these forgotten stories back to life.